What's going on, y'all? I hope you guys are having an amazing weekend. For those that have been keeping up with my updates, or we happen to be discussing on a daily, you know what happened today. So we met some of my upside targets on SPY. I will cover that in a second. I'll be covering a couple tickers today, a few more than I usually tend to do, just to give you guys a general idea of where we are in the markets at the time. So first things first, I want to get started with Bitcoin because this one, as well as SPY and a few others, did meet the buy side liquidity we have been waiting on. So, what is buy side liquidity? I'll make this a quick little lesson, I guess you can say. So, anytime you identify something like this is going to be your liquidity. So, here you have that wick. It is pretty obvious. It just happens to stand out or stick out, whatever you want to call it. If you see this here on any chart, some type of wick like this, that is going to be your liquidity. So I've been waiting for that wick to be filled, which is your buy side liquidity, before taking sells. So we had this decent pullback into the 111 range, which happens to be the 0.5. Now we did go fill that liquidity, which is amazing. Now all we would want to see on the daily time frame is a flip back below the buy side liquidity, which happens to be your previous monthly high at 123k. And if that does happen, we'll see some nice selling pressure to the downside. So I will go ahead and zoom out so you guys can see my targets. I'm not trying to scare you guys with these targets. If you don't think the targets are realistic, that's totally fine. But this is my projections on Bitcoin. So the first pullback, it's gonna happen in waves. So don't expect it to go straight down. We can come retest 786, have a bounce. So let's say we lose these lows, right? We'll come back and retest the lows that were lost and then make the next legs lower, right? So again, ideally, my first target, again, not first target because there are a few on the way down, but I am targeting that 81k zone. So you have your 4618, which is 81k, basically the April lows. This is what I'm going to be targeting. And further down the line, I do have lower targets as low as 49.5k. If I'm being honest with you guys, I think Bitcoin will eventually trade lower than 50k. But for now, these are the two targets I will share with you guys. Again, the 4618 at 81k, and your sell side liquidity is going to be all the way down into 49.5k. Do I think we can head much lower than this? Yes, I do. But for now, let's take it one level at a time. So the level to watch, intraday on the short-term time frame is going to be that 123k level. That was your buy side liquidity. If that buy side liquidity is lost, you can use that as the sweep to take the sells to the downside. Again, these are the targets. So if you were a long-term investor in Bitcoin, you have some profits, or you're barely deciding to buy in, probably not the best idea. So good luck if you are long, or just be careful. These are my projections. Let's see what happens. I'll continue to update this along the way, but I do think those are some realistic targets into 2026. Let's go over SPX 500 real quick. So there are a couple different things I want to focus on this chart. We had a similar thing, buy side liquidity came up, filled that buy side, but looks a little better on SPY, and my SPY chart is really messy as I've been annotating it as the time has been going on. But the original write-up I shared with a few members 2 weeks ago, and it's also posted on YouTube, mentioned I would be planning to short. Literally, again, I have not moved any of this. This has been drawn up weeks in advance, so you guys can call my bluff. It's live on YouTube. There's DMs with people, etc. So these are the levels I shared. I mentioned 2 weeks ago, coming into here, I would take my first sell entry into this zone, which we ended up dropping all the way down here. That paid pretty well. And I have not been too active on the buy side. I took a few longs on the first drop here, but for the most part, since the 618, I have not been tactically long. So I caught this small upside, and into the 618, I secured the majority of my profits. Again, this last move went without me. That is totally fine. Sitting on sidelines until we came into this target today. So again, these levels have been shared in advance. We got that sell entry today, which, you know, pushed a tiny bit higher than my projection, but that's totally fine. For the most part, it's coming along path. So I don't want to spend too much time on SPY just because I've already covered this specific one in the past. Sell target zone is still the same. Again, the chart's starting to get a little messy. I'll clean it up over the weekend, but the targets are the same. We're aiming down. Why do I have this doubled? I'll worry about that later. So I'm still targeting that 523.68, 553.43 zone. Ideally, I would want to see that by, this is not correct, by mid-October, latest mid-November. Ideally, can it happen sooner? Sure, but I'm targeting my strikes and expirations around those times. So mid-October, mid-November is going to be my date projections. And as far as price projections, again, you have the levels here. One thing that I got a question about is, you know, how far out the money should I buy my puts if I am thinking about buying puts? Me personally, I don't think it's worth buying something far out the money. Sure, you might get a 50% discount or more versus loading something that's at the money, but you need to keep in mind the goal of, you know, those options trades is capturing the intrinsic value, which is what ends up ultimately getting you paid. If you're buying your contracts too far out the money, I'm not saying you're not going to make money. You can definitely make money, but what I am focused on myself is actually capturing the move via the intrinsic value. So if you're loading, let's say 600 puts down here, you're barely going to start getting that intrinsic value from here lower. Again, on this drop, your premiums will rise, your contracts will be worth more, but you're barely going to start getting in the money if you're loading 600s versus if you loaded 645, 640, etc. You captured an entire $40 move to the downside, while the other contracts are barely getting in the money. So again, yes, I understand the contracts will be more expensive at the money versus further out the money, specifically, you know, 2-3 standard deviations out the money. But ideally, you're better off taking the higher probability trade, which is closer at the money, and that intrinsic value will, you know, will pay off. So spend the extra bit of money on the premiums. I guarantee you it will be worth it. Another name I want to focus on, I have not been actively trading it myself. I have not traded gold since this top we had here. I, you know, got pretty paid on those sales. I have not been actively trading it or trading it at all, if I'm being honest. So ideally, I wanted to see something similar to like what we had on Bitcoin. So again, very clear buy side liquidity, came, swept that. We have a pretty similar target pattern on gold. So again, this is your buy side liquidity. That's what I'm targeting. Ideally, I would have loved if we swept this here, and now I would be fine with this drop. Can this drop still happen? Sure. But you want to remain cautious because we never swept that buy side liquidity. One thing I did forget to mention on SPX, and I will cover it real quick just because I like going into the details of things. We have a wick that was left today. So ideally, do I want to see lower? Yes, but I'm a little concerned about this wick. Will we come fill this target? Maybe, maybe not, but it's something you want to keep in mind anytime you're thinking of taking a position. So here specifically, can we roll over? Sure. We have, you know, a bit of news tomorrow morning that can move the markets before the open. But ideally, I would like to see liquidity swept before, you know, reverting lower. So can this happen? Sure. If you were, you know, super short overnight, you want to be mindful when you notice things like this. Just, you know, better safe than sorry. So again, do I want to see SPY lower? Yes, but I am keeping an eye on this liquidity. After that liquidity has been swept, I'll be a lot more comfortable in sells. And one thing I want to make clear is we may never sweep that liquidity. We might just roll over from here. And I'm just making that point because sometimes, and it's happened to me in the past, I'll be waiting for a liquidity sweep before taking the trade. Liquidity sweep doesn't come. I get the move that, you know, I was waiting for, and I never got my entry just because of the fact I never got that liquidity swept. So just want to be mindful. Again, general rule of thumb, I will be patient and wait for liquidity to get swept before taking trades. but there are a few times that the trades just go without you, you know, if you wait too long. So that's that. So I've covered Bitcoin, I've covered SPY, I've covered gold. For the most part, all of these pairs are aligning. So I've mentioned cross pair trading and trading when everything is in sync. So when all pairs are in sync and the confluences are lining up in the same direction, I'll cover that in another video. But ideally, for the most part, my four focus points are going to be GJ, which is the pound versus the yen, SPX, Bitcoin, and gold. That is my trifecta. For the most part, just three: SPX, Bitcoin, and GJ. Gold is decent too, but like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of trading gold. So GJ, similar pattern, came, swept these equal highs. So you had equal highs here, you had liquidity that has been swept. So we moved down into 195, which is an amazing move. Recovered everything, swept liquidity. Now, if they really want to, they can come revert back to the previous month low, which happens to be previous weekly low. And then if you see here, you have this massive downside range into April. So again, I do not care who tells me that the markets do not trade in sync. Yes, they do. If you go back, you know, 10, 15, 20 years, and you back test majority of the moves, you will notice that yes, the markets are in sync and they all trade within a vacuum per se. So GJ is a very clean trade here from these highs, potentially coming back to retest that sell side liquidity, which is for the most part the same exact setup you're seeing print currently on Bitcoin, SPX, GJ. Again, gold has not swept its upside liquidity, but every other name for the most part has. So just be mindful. Let's say we do crash or, you know, get a decent pullback on the SPX in the coming days, coming week. Maybe we will see that liquidity sweep on gold, pushing gold higher before it comes down with the rest of the market. So that's that. And one name I'm focusing on myself right now. Well, I have a couple of trades I'm focused on if I'm being honest, but Meta did sweep those highs, had a decent flip today. Ideally, I want to continue to see lower prices, potentially as low as 440, maybe even lower. I'm taking it one day at a time, one step at a time. For now, going into tomorrow, what I would love to see is a potential break below 780, which we did today. If we remain below 780 tomorrow and manage to push lower, you have this entire cluster to the left side, which is a potential problem. Not a problem in the sense that, you know, the trade is going to lose, just a problem in the sense that we might not get a clean move. I try to look for the cleanest high probability move I can. And when you see a lot of traffic to the left like this, you can get a potential, you know, chop or something before the true move comes. So ideally, I like taking clean trades. I would say this is not clean just because of how much traffic we have to the left. But regardless, I think that trade can pay pretty well. There's a couple names that left really clean patterns today, like GS, super clean sell side. If they manage to target it, there was one more name. I think it was Google. Let me check. Yep, Google, similar pattern. So huge liquidity left to the downside. If we manage to breach lows, we will go fill that wick. And if that wick happens to be lost, then you have this entire zone you can target. So I would say this is relatively clean trade. If anyone is thinking of taking that, we have much lower sell side. But again, the entire market for the most part is aligning for that sell side setup. So if you guys got any questions, feel free to reach out. I know a couple people have been waiting for this and hopefully are positioned accordingly. If everything goes well tomorrow and in the coming weeks, we should be pretty paid. If you are not positioned properly or just simply don't know anything about trading and are interested in learning how you can make money off of this downside move, feel free to reach out. So you can make money both ways, when the stocks go up, when the stocks go down. So definitely an amazing setup to take advantage. I'm probably going to go ahead and end the video here. It's been long enough. But if you guys have questions about any of the topics I discussed, like always, feel free to reach out, leave a comment. And I hope you guys have Good night and stay blessed.